Hey, welcome to the very first episode of Duck the Law. Today we're going to be talking about your rights versus reality of the street. Let's talk about it. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to the very first episode of Duck the Law, where we discuss the law, your rights, and how to fly under the radar of those corrupt blue line swine. Now, this is a project I've been meaning to do for a very long time, and I'm happy to finally bring it to YouTube. So, this channel is going to be a lot different than other channels on YouTube that discuss the law. I'm coming from the position that our law enforcement are overarmed, undertrained, and wholly unaccountable. I'm just getting started on this channel, so the best thing you can do to help me out is like and subscribe and share and comment, interact with my videos. This is the first of many to come, and they're going to get better from here. So we all know we have rights on paper, right? We have the freedom of speech, we have freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, the right to bear arms, the right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures, etc. But the reality of the situation is quite different when you encounter an officer on the street. Now, me talking about this isn't an endorsement of how things work. I think we need a lot of change in our legal system. But my purpose here today is to educate you on what is the fantasy and what's the reality. So the reality is the determination of whether your rights were violated happens in a court, not on the street. And this could happen months to years after your encounter on the street. You have to be smart about how we react to the police in the situation. The truth is, most violations of our rights go completely unadjudicated. They're hidden by the system, by internal affairs, by prosecutors, and no one ever hears about them. Your rights are determined in court, not on the street. You have to remember that. What happens on the street is completely different from what happens in court. You don't have a choice on the street. The person in charge is the officer, right or wrong. So one of the biggest obstacles to getting a civil rights case heard in court is cost. It costs about $400 to file a case in federal court. There's waivers and exceptions that exist if you qualify, but there's also attorney's fees. You have to get a lawyer for civil rights cases. This is a very nuanced area of law. Not a lot of people do it. It's a real specialty. Most civil rights attorneys operate on what's called a contingency fee. A contingency fee means you pay nothing up front. The attorney's fees are taken from any award that you get at the end of the case. Typically, about 33% goes to the attorney. Now, what that means is most attorneys won't take cases that are ambiguous, maybe not all the facts are there, even if your rights were violated, or if the award that you're expected to get is too low, because they're not going to want to invest 1 or 2 years of hard work working on your case if your award is only, let's say, $9,000. 33% is going to be $3,000. They're not going to work a whole year on a legal case for $3,000. So cost is a big barrier to relief in civil rights cases. So typically you won't see attorneys take cases that aren't worth at least 50 to 60,000, and that's at the bottom, because at the end they might be able to make 15,000 off that case. So usually cases that aren't worth at least $50 to $60,000 just get swept under the rug, because most attorneys won't touch it, and most people can't afford it. And you also have to think that if you hire an attorney on an hourly basis, these attorneys charge minimum $250 an hour. And the work they do over a year adds up to quite a lot, and it's usually going to be more than what you would be expecting to get as an award from the court. Another barrier is internal affairs and a misconception over what it does, and police departments take advantage of this misconception. So whenever you hear internal affairs, think human resources. That's all it is. It's a police human resources that investigates internal policy, and rarely do they investigate their officers for violations of law. There's a difference. One's administrative, one's internal. That's what they investigate. And then there's criminal law, which they rarely investigate. They try to stay out of this area. They really just want to investigate their policy. They are human resources. It's fancy human resources. That's all it is. Don't let anybody tell you different. Now, there's also issues of what's called qualified immunity, and this is a whole other subject that's going to require its own video, which I will get to. So what can we do in the moment? What can we do on the streets to protect ourselves from police violence, from excessive force, from having our rights violated? Here's a short list. Now, the biggest thing you can do to protect yourself in a police encounter is to obey all orders that deal with your physical body and your physical movement. So when an officer says, show me your hands, show your hands. Get out the car, go ahead and get out the car. Sit on the curb, go ahead and do that. Do what they say to do with your physical body, because if you don't, you just wrote a check for them to commit violence against you. And they will, and they'll get away with it. They can use what's called reasonable force, but what's reasonable to you and what's reasonable to me is completely different from what's reasonable to a police officer. Reasonable force could be tasing you, beating you with a baton, using a taser, using rubber bullets or beanbag guns on you. They can break your window, throw you onto the ground, put control holds on you that are very painful. There are a whole range of things. This range is huge of the discretion that police officers have to commit violence against you that is still considered reasonable force. Now, this is also a whole other video that I want to make, but I just still want to get this information out there on what to do when you're in the street. This is the biggest thing that's going to save people's lives. This tip right here. And one thing I've noticed is a lot of Black and Latino families will tell their kids, if you haven't done anything wrong, don't get out of the car. Don't get out of the car. You don't have to get out of the car if you've done nothing wrong. That's wrong. Maybe legally, maybe in court, you can prove they shouldn't have been able to take me out of the car. But in the moment, you're talking to that police officer. When they say get out of the car and you say no, you just justified force against your person. And now you have to go through months or years of court and litigation just to prove your side right. So don't confuse what I'm telling you about doing what they tell you to do with your physical body. Don't confuse that with talking. You don't have to talk. You don't have to agree to searches of your person or your property. And finally, you should always, always, always lawyer up. As soon as you can, say, I want a lawyer. I don't want to answer questions without a lawyer. I want a lawyer. And this is another whole video of how to request a lawyer. I'll tell you right now, the proper way is, I want a lawyer. That's what you have to say. You can't say, maybe you should give me a lawyer. I kind of want a lawyer. I want to talk to a lawyer. I want a lawyer. It has to be unambiguous. Now, because the determination of whether your rights were violated can take months or years to get justice, it's very important that when you're on the streets encountering a police officer, that you know your rights, you know how to keep yourself safe, and you know how to conduct yourself in the moment. This is going to be the focus of this channel. So thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you on other videos. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them below, and I will see you next time. Until then, don't forget to dock the law.